I am so thrilled to introduce you to the brilliant Andrew Zorich. Located in Seattle, USA, Andrew is an integrative psychotherapist, author, and international trainer in bodywork and meditation. With nearly 2 decades of experience in healing arts, Andrew's work blends trauma informed therapy, somatic psychology, and global contemplative practices. He is the author of Contemplative Somatics, a new book that shares a 7 stage body based meditative process for healing trauma gently. It's a must read. Andrew holds a BA in psychology, an MA in clinical mental health counseling, and is currently completing a doctorate in somatic psychology at the Californian Institute of Integral Studies, an internationally renowned college that integrates Eastern and Western approaches within research and psychology. Having started his career with meditation and bodywork practice, I know you're going to get so much out of this conversation and learning from Andrew's journey, and I cannot wait for you to listen in. Andrew, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us at Teapot Education. Thank you so much for joining.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's an
Um,
absolute pleasure. So,
yeah.
Andrew, you have an incredible realm of qualifications and studies and experiences to your background. And I'm really excited to share that with our learners and look at the journey that you've been on. Before we kind of delve into kind of where that's led you to now and your exciting new book, tell me about your kind of backstory. What kind of got you into the world of kind of integrative health and complementary therapies?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think, for me, it all started when I was 18 and I actually had a near-death experience. Like I was not interested in any holistic anything, but at 18 I had this pretty profound near-death experience that kind of blew my mind open and started me on a kind of journey towards like what's inside of me, what's going on within me.
Yeah.
Um, I started learning meditation after that. I then went to school for massage. I spent about, many, now it's 2 decades learning different types of massage all over the world, learning different types of meditation, eventually realizing that through the body I could access the mind. And in that process, I went to um, mental health counseling school, wanting to like have the dual ability to impact the body and the mind. Um, and so, yeah, I ended up graduating from there, becoming a therapist. I'm now in a doctorate that explores somatic psychology in this really amazing school called California Institute of Integral Studies. And it's kind of a internationally renowned school that integrates Eastern and Western psychology and various other things that um, really inspire a deep sense of global learning. And so I am integrating that in somatic psychology. And so I've created this book that's Contemplative Somatics that kind of integrates my training in meditation and psychotherapy and gives people really simple body-based meditations that they can use to treat trauma. Because that
Yeah.
seems over all those years, there's a theme of me working with trauma, like more severe trauma. I would track people in my bodywork practice. I did a lot of cranial sacral, people with a
Yeah.
lot of abuse on many different layers. And so, yeah, so that's a little bit about my
It's incredible, isn't it?
background.
And I love that kind of organic progression. I mean, not the near death experience that kind of drove you there, but
Yeah,
something like that that forced you to kind of look for more and look
yeah.
for answers. Tell me what that initial kind of experience was like, because coming from someone who wasn't holistic and has obviously had this trauma themselves into meditation, what did meditation offer you? What did meditation sort of open
Mm.
up for you in those early days?
So, so I was probably in a very unhealthy area. I was surrounded like by a lot of unhealthy people. Like on lots of different levels.
Mhm.
I myself, you know, kind of edging on addiction at 18, really unhappy inside, dark thoughts a lot. And that near-death experience kind of just opened me up. I mean, I could go into the depths of that experience, but it basically kind of expanded, making me aware that I'm connected to everyone.
Mm.
That kind of love is sort of the root of why we do things, or at least for me, I saw that place where I exist in a new realm. And so, but when I came back from it, it made me it was hard. And there's this theme with people who have near-death experiences that it's actually really hard to like be back
Yeah.
in sort of a solid physical form
Mm.
in this sort of hard because nothing's changed. So I started to realize that my life was not where I wanted it to be.
Yeah.
And but it was like a big gap. And so I met this meditation teacher that just happenstance upon him at some um metaphysical bookstore I wandered into and I started learning meditation and it really, I just loved it. I would spend hours, honestly, like, you know, a young man, just kind of like really delving into it and accessing new parts of myself.
Mm.
And in that process, he was a psychotherapist as well.
Wow.
And so he had a sort of, while he wasn't counseling me per se, he was very good at me being able to address my different parts of myself that, you know, and I think, yeah. And so I sort of expanded through meditation into the realization that I could then help other people. I started learning different kinds of meditation all over the
Mm.
world. It got me interested in like learning as much as I could. So I would study with monks that came here to Seattle, or I would go to like Thailand and study and lots of different lineages of Buddhism. I thought for a while I might want to become a monk and really, but then I kind of wander. I never really did become a monk, but I explored that realm a lot and studied with Hindu lineages and all sorts of different yoga. So so
Amazing.
that kind of is, yeah, a little bit.
And we know, don't we? I mean, that meditation is so beneficial for us and, on
Mhm.
every level. But still, even today, a lot of people struggle with the idea of meditation. And as you said, there are lots of different forms of meditation out there. What do you see in your practice, or what have you witnessed in your practice with those that kind of may be drawn to it, but just aren't either able or feel they're able to kind of do meditation, or
Yeah.
those that kind of struggle to sort of really tap into its true potential?
I think that's really great question. I get, you know, because I work with trauma a lot,
Mm.
you know, trauma has a deep sense, you know, being accessing the body can be very difficult because that's often where the trauma exists.
Yeah.
So I always, actually in my book, I address that. I kind of go a very slow, gentle process of just beginning is just becoming noticing. Noticing is like just noticing what your body's doing, noticing the breath, you know, just as much as you can access in the beginning. That's the type of meditation, just noticing the breath.
Yeah.
Um, there's something in my book, the very first step is called resourcing, and it's just thinking about a time when you felt loved and safe. And by doing that and then closing your eyes while you think about that time when you felt loved or safe, your body will start to relax a little bit. It'll start to feel more at ease. And so those are like little, I think just like focusing on the breath, really gentle. Um, Other little beginning suggestions is that our minds do spiral when we first start meditating, like they can just go. And I think that's part of the process and just to kind of watch it happen, you know, and let whatever comes up and just kind of feel it. And then eventually those generally will start to calm a little.
And I think that's so important for people to understand, isn't it? Because a lot of people kind of come at it thinking, but I don't feel zen and I'm not calm and I've got all these thoughts because they
Ah,
think in some way their mind must suddenly become vacant or completely clear. And actually, as you say, it's kind of not holding on to the idea of that really. It's just letting these things come and go. And the more you practice
right.
it, the easier it becomes to just sit in the moment and kind of just be
Totally.
present.
Totally. That's totally, yeah. I mean, it's actually just kind of that's part of the process of letting everything just
Yeah.
arise and watching it. That's one way of really just meditating. Yeah, and what they do, I mean, and there's a deeper relaxation on an internal level. They call it regulation a lot.
Mm.
That just happens just by sitting. And
Yeah.
there's also from a neuroscience back, there's this if you focus on the body, you access the brain stem. If you
Mm.
focus on and if you focus on your emotions, you access the limbic.
Yeah.
And if you focus on your thoughts, you access the frontal brain. Not to get too technical, but um, in a lot of somatic work, they talk about focusing on the body because it accesses that deep-rooted stuff that makes us anxious, that makes us, and it's an easy way to access just by focusing on our breath, noticing what our body's doing. You're accessing this deeper primal part of you that's kind of anxious, and it's an easy way to just, and there's a lot of theories that say if you do that first, then the rest will kind of open up.
Yeah.
There's something called the neurosequential method, like when you
Mm.
work with children,
Yeah.
meditating, or like for teachers that if you if they that there's this theory that they can't learn if they're not regulated in their body. And so there's this idea of like accessing the body,
Yeah.
getting the child to regulate, feel comfortable, then they can
Yeah.
make that connection to their emotions, which is relational. So
Mm.
then you can actually connect with the individual because we can't really connect with each other if our limbic system isn't open. And
Yeah.
then our reasoning opens and we can learn new stuff.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. And actually, as you said that, it just kind of all I envisage is this beautiful lotus flower unfolding.
Yeah,
It's kind of like
totally.
that
That's how
sort
I
of
see it.
opening
Yeah.
exercise. Yeah, fantastic. And so that kind of entry into meditation for you and that journey into just sort of deepening your practice and understanding with meditation led led you into kind of body work and kind of, direct sort of touch-led sort of therapy.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that kind of journey for you, as a lot of our learners are kind of touch-led practitioners.
Yeah, I think that I always, even when I was younger, I was kind of fascinated by massage. My aunt owned a spa and she would get me like little facials and hand as a teenager because I had
Right.
acne or something,
Okay.
and I remember it kind of opened up something in me, and then I had thought about it, but it took quite a while before I decided to like go to school for it.
Mm.
And then yeah, I decided like it would be a good way to like help heal people because I wanted to help, I wanted to somehow, and it yeah, and I love the creative aspect of body work, so I learned lots of different modalities along the way, and all sorts of different modalities. Again, I kind of like studied, went international, studied, spent a lot of time in Thailand, so
Mm.
a lot of Thai massage, and I loved finding the unity of all these different massage modalities, like, the Sen lines or the acupuncture lines or the acupressure lines, and with shiatsu and, different things. So I enjoy personally like I guess that's sort of showing up how I enjoy learning one thing and then kind of finding unity among
Mm.
like different traditions and trying to integrate that a little bit.
Yeah. And it's lovely, isn't it? And I think it's such a beautiful, the fact that we have got this global portfolio of modalities out
Right.
that have been influenced by different cultures and different ways of thinking and being. It's such a beautiful kind of playground, isn't it, to kind of learn.
And so accessible today. I
Yeah.
think probably in schools today, I imagine they're probably integrating a lot more
Mm.
It's been almost 2 decades. It shows
Yeah.
how old I am. But it was more of just basic Swedish when I went to school.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And
um
so, and sometimes that's quite nice, isn't it, to kind of get those foundations, but then to realize that actually, there's these energy,
yeah.
there's this deeper thinking, and there's this kind of, different movement techniques and different fascial releases, and as you mentioned, acupuncture points and shiatsu points. Stuff like
Using your feet,
yeah,
ashiatsu, that's become real popular. I think it's called sarga
yeah,
body work, the ones where they use the straps and
yes,
there's all
yeah,
sorts of
yeah, all sorts of creative expression out there.
yeah, yeah.
But I think it's quite interesting that a lot of bodywork therapists, when they start to, kind of stay in the game and they develop their skills and they expose themselves to those global modalities, inevitably get to a point, I did it myself, where you kind of start to question your understanding on the human mind and emotions. So, you'd already entered into
Yeah.
meditation and kind of, sort of developed in that way, excuse me, before your massage. But I think it's quite interesting when you work with people in such an intimate sort of profession like touch-led therapy
Mm,
is, and it's such a privileged opportunity, isn't it, to kind of really see people sort of in this kind of
totally.
vulnerable state. And inevitably what often comes with that is an emotional outlay. People often share and sort of
Right.
get a lot of both physical and psychological sort of benefits from that. And a lot of therapists, touch-led therapists, will say to me, how do I learn more? Or should I learn counseling skills? Should I go and be a psychotherapist? Should I learn coaching NLP?
Right.
Recognize that their words matter, the conversation, the consultation, the way they're interacting with the client through their techniques, all actually make a massive difference and influence the outcomes of that
Totally.
experience. So it was interesting you kind of recognize that yourself through massage. Was that the primary thing that led you into your sort of somatic psychology?
Yeah, I mean, I think I learned that's a phenomenal explanation of it, by the way. I really like how I feel, but I learned like that over time, just the release of stress. People would talk to you, I knew that like I couldn't counsel people, probably partially because I didn't know how
Yeah.
specifically, but I knew that they were getting tremendous emotional benefit. Sometimes if people have a hard day, they might be in tears a little bit, just talking. You are counseling in different ways. And so it's such a beautiful path, and in my current PhD, somatic psychology, we we talk about the roots of body work and the roots of psychology, these sort of holistic things that a lot of them started in California, kind of at this place called the Esalen Institute,
Yes.
like Rolfing and, a lot of these it was sort of like an amalgamation where people would go in and create like new modalities.
Mm,
But the the idea is that it's called bottom-up processing. So
yeah.
it's somatics and body work are so interlinked.
Mhm.
I mean, you're doing somatic work, which soma means just the body, but from a psychological standpoint, there's something bottom up. So basically how I explained with the brain, but
Mm,
it's like processing. So you start with the body and then it goes through the motions and the mind. When talk therapy is like through the mind
mm,
down into the body. And so um I think that yeah, like I learned especially through cranial sacral therapy, like how impactful it is on the mind and
mhm.
what comes up on a deep visceral levels, deep fascial levels, everything we keep everything in the body.
It's
And it's so
incredible,
yeah.
isn't it, to witness?
Yeah, and a really good, there's a lot of books now. It's becoming quite more known. So like books like
Mm,
The Body Keeps the Score and the by and there's the trainings that are kind of integrating body work like these like your listeners might know about Peter Levine and somatic experiencing because some body workers take that so that they can do deeper trauma work. And it's all, um, there's quite a few now that integrate that. It's where people can kind of find that middle balance between the two.
And it's quite incredible. And I know I felt blessed myself to kind of have that, kind of complementary therapy touch based, kind of skill set in my toolbox and the psychotherapy based tool set. And sort of even now with TCM and sort of acupuncture specifically, because actually quite a lot of clients, particularly here in the UK, I find aren't always as ready to move into psychotherapeutic support unless they
Right,
are unless they are at the bottom in their darkest place. It's a very
right.
reactive, I can't cope. I've tried everything else. I now must go for therapy. And I know that's not the same sort of in the US, but here there's still a lot of stigma around getting sort of mental health support. And even though we talk about it now so much, the last sort of 5 years particularly, there's still a lot of people that are nervous to come forward. And I still have lots of people who'll say to me, I know I need help, but it's probably it's probably I'll sort it out. I'll figure it out. I'll be okay.
Yeah,
But actually,
yeah,
what they would feel quite comfortable coming for is, sort of touch-led treatments and acupuncture and whatnot. And often, of course, there's huge psycho-emotional aspects to sort of acupuncture and five
right.
elements
Yeah,
traditional Chinese medicine. And so actually what I often find in my practice is people will come in for things like acupuncture for their, sort of hurt knee or elbow or anxiety or something
yeah,
relatively accessible, but actually within a few sessions they're opening up to what might have been actually a real motivation or the real rationale of
right,
coming forward.
right.
There's that crossover. Do you find that with your practice? Are you
I do. Yeah, that's a beautiful. I just am making the connection that you also do body work and counseling, and like that's not a very common thing, to have someone. So I appreciate hearing your perspective on that, like the two. And there's quite a bit of stigma here too.
Mm,
Wanted to circle back to that here. And so, you'll get this really reserved counseling. It's usually somebody else is pushing them to get counseling and, and then but yeah, within the body, I I I think that strangely my own practice seems to be like a little bit segregated in that I do have body work and then counseling.
mm,
And then through the body work, those people will release
yeah.
in a different way. They're kind of coming just slightly different, but exactly what you're saying. Like originally they're coming for headaches or, things. And then there's all these like past stuff kind of intermixed in it. And because it's probably because I do deep trauma work with my counseling clients, there's a bit of a distance just naturally. Um, we work with body based, but it's kind of like in your own bubble. Because
Absolutely.
I actually do a lot of survivors of
Mm.
assault and things. So actually coming to a male therapist alone is
It's a
sort
big
of
step.
brings up stuff. Yeah. And so that's sort of healing just in itself, you
Mm.
know, if, and there's a great honor in that and being
Absolutely.
able to hold that space for somebody who's maybe had a lot of trauma from a male, which is a lot of people, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a beautiful path, but I
Yeah.
appreciate,
It is
yeah.
a beautiful path, and I agree, and I get that, and it's not a blend for me neither. People book separate for kind of psychotherapeutic base. I actually don't do hands-on touch anymore, only acupuncture or sort of psychotherapy.
Oh,
But I
cool.
teach
Yeah.
a lot of touch-based treatments still for people with compromised health, and of course that in itself has its own kind of psycho-emotional
Yeah,
aspects
beautiful. Yeah.
kind of release. But in my practice, people either come for acupuncture or talk therapy. But what I find is a lot of people that come for the acupuncture eventually will come and sort of have more psychotherapeutic intervention as well, in
Totally.
addition, as they felt more comfortable and trust. And again, it's getting to know your practitioner, isn't it? That's part of kind of that continuation of client interaction and sort of relationship, and they feel safe and seen
And
and can evolve and
yeah, and I think it's such a great point that when you access one, it opens the door, like you're sort of a doorway to a lot of things for that person possibly, if like they're just coming for massage because it's normalized and you
mm,
can like you're saying, so like a therapist could easily, or a massage therapist can link that to other people and be sort of a
yeah.
doorway to so many more holistic things, I think. oftentimes when people search out alternative therapists, they're looking for something,
Yeah.
and so yeah, the
Absolutely.
doorways are definitely, yeah, opened.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's encouraging more kind of touch-led therapists to deepen their understanding, if it's only for their own reference or if it's for their
Right.
academic sort of growth into sort of more psychotherapeutic and sort of psychology-based sort of practice, but also to have that network, as you say, to have that kind of network of people around you where you can become that sort of doorway and facilitator for your clients as they're kind of ready to move forward or to move on to something
Oh,
sort of else to support them. It's, it's
I
that's the
can,
great thing,
yeah,
is networking.
yeah, and it's making me think of like a little bit like since your audience is a lot of massage or maybe a lot of massage therapists, is that right now it's, somatics is the buzzword. There's a
Yeah.
lot of somatics as a buzzword, and so um getting training, there's some like really simple trainings in like something called polyvagal theory and nervous system trainings that are easily learned and then accessible to share with clients,
Mhm.
about how massage impacts the nervous system from a like really like from a shutdown state to a active state. And it can be sort of a doorway for the therapist and also the client to understand that massage is more than just you placing your hands on, some of these little trainings they have today in
Yeah,
different,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
More than
which is
just pampering. My pet
right,
massage, Andrew, is that is
right,
pampering. I'm like, listen, it has its benefits of being pampering, but it is a therapy. It has a huge therapeutic benefit. The power of
totally.
touch is just phenomenal, and it's
So
it's
many
the nature of our
layers.
need, isn't it? We need that power.
Totally, totally.
So,
Neurobiologically,
yeah,
somatically. I mean, so many different systems are impacted positively. If
yeah,
we all had massage once a week, the
yeah.
world would be a different place, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And so talk to me about the progression for you, because obviously you went into somatic psychology. I know you also do hypnotherapy and EMDR and, as you said, a lot
Yeah.
of trauma-informed sort of work as well. You've got your master's, you're in the process of doing your PhD. This is kind of a hunger for kind of knowledge and sort of growth,
Right.
clearly. So tell me about this transition and what you've kind of learned from that first touch point into somatic psychology to now.
Well, something I learned through massage, okay, and it sounds a little funny, is that it's a really competitive where I live.
Mm,
Holistic is very competitive, like especially in Seattle. It's like all the west coast of the US is like super holistic. And
right.
so like just learning massage doesn't won't really cut it. Like you don't won't get very busy. You have to like really learn, 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 learn.
Yeah.
I'm naturally love learning new things, but I would just keep learning. So I would maintain kind of competitiveness. I was
Mm,
in kind of for a while the luxury spa world,
yeah.
training and hotels and things. So that kept me competitive there. But so I'm not thinking about it per se competitively, but just to survive,
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah.
So I went to the counseling school and I knew from the beginning if I didn't really dive into all the things I wanted to, and it's passion led, but also, that I would be in a sea of therapists that are here that offer, I wanted to focus on trauma. So I just dove into all these like EMDR is such a powerful one for trauma. I use that a lot and have amazing, amazing transformation with it.
And for people
Um,
that don't know what EMDR
oh
means,
yeah, sorry.
okay.
Yeah, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And so that's the name of it, but it's an H-stage process where you begin by developing sort of resources and then doing a bilateral tapping or eye movement
Mm,
to re while going through your past trauma, like these roots of trauma in the therapy. And what happens is it it takes like the fire out of it, takes all the emotional reaction that we carry into the day. And there's a
Mm,
lot of, I could explain it neurobiologically, but it kind of clears the thalamus and where we're stuck in cycles. And so, I mean, just amazing stuff. Like I just had a police officer, which is unusual. I don't usually get police officers, but he was having, night terrors. He had PTSD because he couldn't save somebody in a burning boat of all things, and it completely cleared all his symptoms. Like he no longer has the PTSD, and so I highly recommend if somebody is suffering from like severe like PTSD to go to at least check out EMDR. It's becoming quite popular. So, um, I think, yeah. So some of my book is integrates little pieces of the beginning parts of EMDR, like resourcing. And
mm,
so, my book on somatic work is so the secondary beyond EMDR is somatic work is really known for trauma work, Um, and so, yeah, I work a lot with people in their bodies, like what's happening in your body right now? What's the origination of the behaviors, whether they're addictive behaviors, whether they're responsive anxiety behaviors, whether they're and like what's your body doing, like and then through there digging into what emotions are in there and how to release them through meditative states, how to access and then release them.
yeah, incredible. And it sounds amazing. And I would love to ask a million questions,
Right.
sort of on that. And I will, but maybe off camera. Um, so, I mean, this is, it's such a beautiful field of work, and clearly, as you're now doing your doctorate, it's a never-ending area of study,
Right.
isn't it? Because we're evolving and understanding,
Right.
developing
Totally.
enough. What drove you into, you've done your masters? That normally puts most people off, and sort of makes
Right.
enough's enough, especially, as a dad and trying to live your life, pay the bills. What drove you into sort of going, no, I have to do this. I have to push through and do this kind of doctorate now.
Um, well, I'm totally like, so I went to the mental health counseling and I totally wanted to learn the somatic side of things
Mm,
even deeper than I already had. And so I thought this is this program. It's kind of hard to get into. So I kind of shot out. I was kind of shot in the dark that I could get into it.
mm,
Um, and they just are really known for this. It's just like it's this infusion and culmination. It's such a beautiful program because it just pulls together all these people that are just so interested in somatics. And like, like one of my co-students is like her whole thing is somatics and eating and
mm,
dietary and nutrition. And she's teaching all over the world on somatics and nutrition and like binge eating and how that relates to, different therapeutically,
yeah,
like how our association with food all the way down to the embryological, like when you're a baby and you're born and the way that like if there's traumas in there and the way we
interesting.
absorb food and this all these like really
Yeah,
subtle like
yeah,
it's always
incredible.
fascinating to hear each student's path and but yeah, I just really I've always loved the school too. I always thought like how could I get into this this college and but
The manifestation then, Andrew.
right. And it's sort of like you're sharing all these beautiful things you've learned. Each teacher is sort of like that in a different way, right? And that's what I love to learn from experience, not so much academically.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I like about it. It's sort of an experiential, like what was your experience and the teachers share? I studied Rolfing and I'm also, or I'm a somatic coach and a social justice warrior, like all these different things that are, you know,
Mm.
just passionate about healing. And so, yeah, I think I might have gone off track a little of your question,
No, but it's
but
interesting.
yeah. And so, I, and I think like coming back to my book is sort of an integration of what I've learned there and also just all the years of meditation and stuff, like talking about my book a little bit.
Well,
And
the
like,
book is newly released, isn't it? You launched it
yeah,
just this year. It's
yeah,
called
just
Contemplative Somatics. And so
right.
tell us more about the book then. What is the main takeaways from, or what are, sorry, the main takeaways from the book? And who did
Yeah.
you write it for?
Yeah, and I think that we kind of have covered a little bit of, a little bit of it in the sense that it's a gentle body-based, I mean, so what even the title says, body-based meditations for healing trauma gently. And so it's like these are very subtle, it walks you through really slowly how to access when you have trauma, your body. It explains sort of the neuroscience behind it. And so it starts off with resourcing, like developing, you got to fill your cup first before you can even address any trauma. So
Mm.
most of the times people that have a lot of trauma are really dysregulated in life and situations and unintentionally creating situations because dysregulation kind of follows dysregulation. What I
Mm.
mean by that is like our cycles of what we know, what we feel safe in is actually not safe for us, and it like repeats and repeats. And so,
Doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah, by interrupting in the beginning that cycle, by just beginning to notice times where we felt loved and safe, developing inner safety, and really the root of the whole book is developing safety on the internal. So then the second layer is like interoception, they call it. So being able to start to notice what your body's doing and where the emotions lie in your body and kind of starting to acknowledge that what that stuff comes up when you're interacting with other people, like why you get tense when you're at work with a certain person. Why does this person like, and so your chest might get tight or panicky. And then the next phase is regulation using your breath, different techniques to kind of calm that, kind of in the moment. So real applicable both in real world, but also you can do deeper meditations with it. And then kind of approaching yourself compassionately is the next step. Like, so you know, so often when we have trauma or things, people get in these feelings of shame and judgment and polarities of right and wrong, good and bad, that they're, and really kind of lifting some of that off because we get so locked in when we have, um, like with just a lot of shame spirals that build on top of each other with each event that happens. And then the deeper stuff, which is sort of highlighted in the book, is like only if people are ready to kind of access, kind of meditating on the event itself once you feel really stable, which creates different ways of releasing that expression. You gently access it and then your body might shake a little bit, or these might be different responses, and it kind of talks a little bit about how to release some of that using art and use different ways, using your voice. And then I go into more advanced things like after that, after explaining like ecosomatics, which is like kind of using nature, like ecotherapy a little bit and connecting with the inner elements, outer elements, and intergenerational trauma, how it passes through different generations. And, you know, when you learn that, it starts to make less pressure on you sometimes, and you can start to have compassion on your relatives that also are suffering and passing it down. And, um, yeah, and just kind of
That's
some
such
other
a beautiful area, isn't it? That intergenerational sort of trauma. I think it's an area
totally,
that's kind of coming to the fore more and more, isn't it? And I think it's quite
totally.
interesting, isn't it? I distinctly remember as a teenager in sort of biology, you just took me back to a moment of thinking, well, if we can inherit eye color and hair color, why can't we inherit memory? Like, why can't we inherit,
Right.
kind of these other things? We take it for granted. And, as a parent myself, as I know you are, and many of our listeners will be, you notice even with your own children that a lot of their kind of traits aren't necessarily just learned behavior. They're developed young and
Yeah,
identifiable quite early. And there's a
Yeah.
real resonance to kind of the kind of family line, isn't there? And it's such an interesting
Yeah.
area of study.
It totally is. And they've really scientifically are able to like show that that the anxieties pass on, survival mechanisms because they're like survival, Holocaust survivors,
Yeah,
sad stuff. And
yeah,
um, but then on the other hand, of course, it makes sense that when you heal, and this is like probably one of the most profound realizations I've had in my life is that when you heal, you don't just heal yourself, you do heal generations forward and backward. And so I have this, I mean, I can share this one instance where, you know, I had a mom, like she had some trauma. She never told me about it, but I sensed it and I did some work in healing. And then we talked about things. She eventually kind of admitted that she had some trauma and she had some fear about, me growing up to be a traumatic, like just
yeah,
her stuff. But I watched kind of this domino effect of me doing my own healing work, her kind of then having to kind of look at her stuff
yeah,
and then her actually turning and facing, and I watched like it go through generations a little, and it's this beautiful, self-realization that like doing therapy work, you're really like it's even more why there shouldn't be a stigma around it because you're
yeah,
stopping like from passing down some of
yeah,
that stuff, and so every step, even body work or psychotherapy, I think are really like even it doesn't have to be like some fancy thing,
mm,
just doing some of the work can help stop some of those patterns.
yeah,
Just asking for help is like the biggest one of like the biggest thing, like biggest first step, and it's that alone. Sometimes it's just a big,
massive. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just such a meaningful difference. And as you say, it doesn't have to be this big thing. It's often the smallest things, but it's the
Right.
leaning into it. And it's just that's such a beautiful kind of, sort of idea and realization, isn't it? That it kind of it's positively developing and opening up opportunities and a kind of more harmonized life for the generations to come and healing, generations back. What a
Right.
power that is.
Well, and then like I mean, even just like for your body work, people. I mean, I've worked on. For a while there, I had like families, like
Mm,
different generations of body work, and they will carry the same sort of postural stuff sometimes. And so then kind of working on, I mean, you're working on the physical
mm,
body, which then stops other patterns too, because they're more relaxed,
yeah.
their systems more regulated, and then they're interacting more relaxed with. So you're having that same sort of impact. I thought that would be important to kind of
Yeah, that's such,
share like
and
that.
it is so important, isn't it? That at every touch point, that opportunity to kind of help regulate
Right.
and sort of get into that parasympathetic and get people kind of functioning from a place of calm
Right.
contentment is better for everyone and all around in every
Totally.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Incredible work. I mean, Andrew, I could sit with a cup of tea and curl up and just talk to you all afternoon and evening.
Totally. Same,
That's
same.
absolutely for sure. And I've watched you for a very long time, and I know we've interacted sort of loads over the years and sort of tried to get together to do this. So I'm just
Yeah.
so thrilled to have the opportunity to kind of learn about what you're doing now and how you're doing it, and to share kind of the incredible sort of launch of your book, Contemplative Somatics. We'll put all the details below so people can grab themselves
Thank
a
you.
sort of copy. I wonder if you'd do me the honor of just kind of, sort of wrapping up for us in kind of just a few thoughts for our learners, for those that are maybe at the beginning of their journey and kind of thinking about how can I protect myself? Because actually, this work also has an
Oh,
opportunity to kind of be heavy on people who are
yeah.
able to kind of protect themselves. And a lot of people, particularly because we train a lot of therapists working with people with chronic health, particularly things like cancer, who aren't always in curative states or in treatments that are sort of optimistic and progressive, or, early onset to late onset dementia, or
Right.
having
That can
having
be.
experienced lots of loss. So what would your advice be to the practitioners themselves of how to best protect and regulate their emotions in the practice? Uh,
That's a really interesting, that's just an interesting question because there's like the physical, there's the emotional,
mm,
and it's kind of like a mental if we were to separate that a little
yeah.
bit. So like physically, like if it's a body-based therapy, then I would really, I've noticed because a lot of my colleagues have dropped off because they haven't physically maintained structural posture. I think, maintaining leverage, using leverage,
Mhm,
making sure you're not using your hands all the time, different tools. But I think that idea about structural balance works emotionally too, like emotional balance, like not getting too lost and overbending too much emotionally for the clients, finding that good, gentle balance where you know, it's an opportunity for growth too, for the individual, for the therapist to kind of notice if they're getting entwined a little bit and finding that center
mm,
point emotionally. So
yeah.
just kind of, I think one thing I've learned through like say Thai massage or shiatsu is it's a moving meditation.
Mm,
Like massage can be more like a moving meditation rather than a force or something. It's kind of so that can be one thing. Self-care is so um if you notice your thoughts, you're thinking about a client a lot, kind of thinking about the relationship a little bit and noticing if you're, again, overbending or just finding a nice, I don't, each person's so different. Each therapist is so different, but, meditation is really great
mhm,
to really regulate because if you're regulating for other people, which is what you're doing, right? You're like,
yeah.
you have to be calm from
Mm,
beginning to end. You walk in, especially with cancer patients, it's a sensitive place. And so I think just I think being is the most beautiful thing you can do, for someone who's got a lot of pain,
yeah.
just listening and without, but yeah, if you're finding yourself exhausted in one of those realms,
Mm,
probably want to reassess so you don't over long term get burnt out,
yeah.
like how you're approaching it a little bit. And, and it can
Yeah.
be difficult sometimes and harder.
Yeah. I think
And
it's difficult, but I think the more aware the industry becomes, and when I say that, I talk about the spa industry, particularly for a lot of entities who
um,
will be working in those environments. I think the more aware the spa industry and the leadership within the spa industry is aware of just how much of a give that is and how much of an ask it is,
right.
the better
I
they
like I
will
have
support them
comments
as
on
well,
that
won't
too.
they? Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
Yeah, and being in the spa industry, that's a little different too over a long period of time, like holding space for clients that have more income, that are not in a desperate mode, but might have higher expectations. There's a level of intensity that can create on the internal, and that's a different kind of like you need to probably pay attention to your internal space and if you if you have a few hard clients it can drag on you and not to take it personally because people can be a little critical sometimes in the spa world
yeah,
and but yeah that's I think that's where a lot of the learning lies though the growth
yeah,
is in those experiences like me
absolutely.
being able to be a counselor honestly is being in really I really believe it's being in really high-end spa situations where I had to refine myself
Yeah.
to the ability to feel comfortable working on ultra wealthy, ultra and being okay with receiving negative feedback,
Mm,
like not taking it personally, but just because it's the culture of people like, and I don't mean negative, like you're doing something wrong, but just like being okay with allowing people to have their feelings, have their experience and, you know, it's a
yeah.
different, and so I that's a whole different
Yeah.
conversation,
It's all
but
learning, isn't it?
yeah,
It is
because
all
yeah,
learning and all growth, which is incredible. But I think, yeah, it's kind of recognizing that there is a big emotional give and a big physical give to sort of most complementary and alternative therapy.
yeah,
And that has to
mm,
there has to be an aspect of working on yourself to emotionally regulate, protect, and stabilize, doesn't there? Otherwise, it does
yeah. And
become
I've
quite short
had
term.
so many times where I haven't taken care of myself
Yeah.
properly, and haven't gotten body work myself, or
Mhm.
and it's so important to
Yeah.
receive. And I think as givers, we forget sometimes. A lot of people who are caretakers
Yeah.
don't always
I
take
think
care of themselves.
absolutely. And I think actually the beauty, and I'm sure you're the same, is when you're in the world of psychotherapy or psychoanalytical, clinical sort of talk therapy, you have to have supervision. You
Right.
have to lean
Mhm.
into that, and I know myself, I can't stay licensed or practice without having my supervision. And I just wonder why we don't do more of that for touch-led therapists too, where there's this enforced, kind of mentoring,
Mhm.
coaching or opportunity, because it is such a big emotional sort of load, isn't it? And even if it's just coming together, talk if you need to, share techniques if you need to, and it's about the practical aspects of the role, but also it might be a safe place to discuss some of those emotional challenges, difficult
Right.
clients or whatnot. But like none of that, it's not a even suggested thing in that kind of sense.
Right. It's such a phenomenal point. That's
Yeah.
such a phenomenal point because it really would, it really relieves having groups of people or supervision. It really helps processing,
Oh,
being able
massive.
to, and I don't, yeah, that's not taught at all. And I think that shows the sort of value sometimes it's not as valued massage as it should be. It should be up high. It's like one of the root
Yeah.
medicines throughout all the world,
Ah,
like it's except
yeah.
more current,
Yeah.
like allopathic. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely recommend like finding people even if it's just other friends that are
Mhm.
massage therapists to just chat and
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
clients or
Small group.
issues that
Yeah.
come up. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely invaluable.
No.
And so, Andrew, leave us then with some ideas of what's next for you. I mean, obviously, you've only just launched the book. You're still in the middle of the doctorate, so hopefully that's plenty
Right.
for you at the moment. But what are you hoping this will kind of do for you? And how's your practice sort of shaping personally, sort of moving forward now? What's the dream?
Yeah. So I didn't mention that I also, occasionally will do somatic coaching internationally, and I've taught meditation classes internationally over Zoom and in other places. But my goal now I'm kind of creating a more format for the contemplative somatics for people that have interest in it, like workshops and things, maybe some online content. It's going to kind of slow going with everything I have going on.
Yeah.
But I hope to then teach, kind of share that. I like doing little workshops.
Mm.
Kind of as this, I've noticed like, and it's nice for therapists to hear this too, is if you get like a little niche and then it can be your travel money, right? Like you go somewhere and it pays for the trip. You
Yeah.
go somewhere and it pays for a trip and then it can be a little bit more extra on top. So there's that. And then I want to eventually hopefully become a professor of, psychology, holistic psychology, and maybe teach international. I mean, it's like goals, kind of like find more holistic. We have some colleges all along the West Coast I could probably,
Yeah.
teach from, but that's down the line. I still got a ways dissertation.
Yeah.
It's a, it's a 3 to 4 year process. So
Yeah,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm kind of the, the big thing that I love about the college I'm in is that it's experiential
Mm.
as well as, so they really, they have this whole, they call it praxis where you actually like do the practices
Yeah.
while you're learning them. And that's unusual and I think important in any education setting, something we could learn a
Absolutely.
lot.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it
yeah,
sounds
so
incredible.
that's a lot of stuff what I'm
It,
doing.
it sounds incredible, and I have no doubt that you will achieve it all. And I'm
Thank you.
sure there
Thank
are
you.
lots of our learners that would love to not only just buy the book, but to come along and do any workshops that you've got to help them deepen their own understanding of how to better support
Yeah.
clients. with
I
somatics.
have a friend in Brighton that I taught a bodywork class
Mm.
from. So if I ever do that, I'll send a
Yeah,
little note out over and
absolutely. For sure, for sure. Well, Andrew, it's been an absolute joy to spend time with you and to learn more about everything you do
Thank
and the
you.
incredible journey that you've had. Thank you for coming
Thank
and
you.
shining a
Thank you
light
so
on
much.
your career.
I
It's
learned a
oh,
lot myself in this process. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's
absolute pleasure.
been same, same. Thank you.
Thank you.